Hello everybody, and welcome to another installment of my hunt for Bigfoot. This is chapter 3, and today we're going to be going over a few of the signs and some of the things to look for as you're out in the woods looking for this huge hairy man of the woods. And again, as I gone over in the last couple of episodes here, this creature that we're looking for, the legend of it at least has existed for thousands of years. As to what or who the giant of the woods is, we really don't know. Up until quite recently, actually, as the time frame goes, he had always been considered to be a human being, but as of the last couple of 3 decades, we look at him more as a primate, a gorilla of the woods. And while we're out hunting in the woods, we see a lot of different things that we can't explain, and we attribute it to this being, such as my little creepy eyes video here with this, whatever it was in the culvert that peeked out at me. Don't know what it is. I approached it with caution since I didn't have any weapons at the time to defend myself should it have been an animal intent upon attacking me, but I never did find out what it was. Couldn't find any prints or anything on the other side, so I'm not really sure what it was. However, you know, as we're looking through the woods, looking for hairy creatures, there are other things that we can come across, such as this little hairy monster coming right up here that you can see. This is a rather large but cute little spider that I came across, and this was actually while I was not in the woods but nearby with my cameras. I just happened to be upon this spider at the right time. But this also signifies one of the dangers that you have to worry about when you're out in the woods is keeping yourself. I got bit by one of these little buggers a couple of years ago, and it caused some ugly lacerations that got infected, and it was fairly painful. It was barely noticeable, but when you're out in the woods looking for Bigfoot, make sure that you have to protect yourself from a lot of different things out there. Make sure you're protected against sun if you're out during the day, and make sure that you have your insect guard or insect spray or whatever you're going to use available, and make sure that you use it frequently so that you don't have to worry about being bothered and possibly being injured by something that you'd rather not have to deal with. But this, if you're watching this in the full screen version, in HD that I'm doing here, I know unfortunately YouTube tends to compress a lot of files, and it makes some things really hard to get the detail on because of it. This one has actually a pretty hairy body. But to get back to the little video, we're looking for a lot of different signs through the woods. One of the things that I find that you should be aware of, and this is an old Indian trick, is listen for the sounds of the animals and the birds. Generally speaking, and from what I have read and heard about other Bigfoot sightings, is that when Bigfoot is around, quite a commotion. As far as the fear factor of animals go, domestic animals tend to get pretty vocal, and they'll try to escape. Woodland creatures, they generally tend to be very, very quiet. You will hear a lot of silence when they go through the woods. So one of the things you should be looking for as you're going through is looking for signs, such as this possible footprint that I found. I'm not really sure that it was. I can't prove it. That as we're looking for this particular babe here. But I've noticed that there are various times throughout history that you can come across legends and stuff that can give you some clues on what to look for. These pictures of various Indian rocks, and some of these are from the Tule River Indian Reservation in California. The prior one showed a grotesque man with big feet and big hands, and then a big footprint of what looks like some of today's footprint castings. And there's a lot of different images that you can get from these rocks if you're somewhere near where they can be found. And in a later episode, I'm going to go over a bunch of them and some of the folklore behind them and what they're all about and what they supposedly share with us. But if you're in an area where these rocks can be found, it's well worth a visit. The famous Bigfoot family. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ones here where the redness of the paintings have been actually recollected and exaggerated to give a little bit better picture of what these pictures really are. They seem to be pretty childish compared to some of the other giant man paintings that you can find on some of the rocks. And then you see some really weird things like this, what looks like a dancing elk. This picture here, I took from the web. I've sent out some different emails. Haven't got anything back, but we're going to get into that picture in another episode coming up as to what that is and why some of the things that we see in the woods are not what we think they are. Excuse me, but this hunt here, I was with my bicycle going through the woods looking for a bunch of things, and this forest that I was in is in part of a kind of a trackway which stretches from western Maine, goes up through the coastal areas and on up into down east Maine. And I've researched it very carefully, and a creature who wants to go from western Maine to far eastern Maine can actually do that being completely surrounded by woods by a rather convoluted course, but this is along that course. It's almost like a wood corridor that they can travel through. And while I was here, I saw out of the corner of my eye some movement in the woods. If you're doing this in the large screen vision, you might be able to see some movement there. I couldn't really pick up anything there. It looks like some, but I can't verify for sure that it was movement. But I did definitely catch some movement moving from the left to the right, which would have been kind of a northwesterly direction. And notice it's very, very quiet. And then all the birds and the squirrels start to go chirping, and you can hear in the distance a blue jay. And this is what I was talking about, where sometimes when these things are around, it's very, very quiet. So what you want to listen for, the absence of noise. Generally, when you find the absence of noise, there is something that is going to be menacing, or at least that the animals feel to be menacing in the neighborhood. And when that menace has been removed or has moved on, then they'll go back to being quite noisy. Now these squirrels and the blue jays and stuff have absolutely no problem with other woodland creatures if there's a human being around. But up to this point, the only thing you could hear was a very, very distant bird. So I went back to the main trail, and I cut across to where I think this thing was heading from. And you notice here in this particular area that there were what looks like some heavy footprints. There wasn't anything, any shape that I could determine was absolutely a human footprint. But, however, I found these black morels laying on the ground. There's one there, and there's a couple more further in that I couldn't really get a good shot of with my camera. But it's almost as if somebody was coming along the way and dropped them. Those giant black morels are a rather prized mushroom. Kind of hard to believe that somebody would have just left them there. So later on, after probably 2.5 hours later, I went traveling down the trail some more, and I came across a meadow in this forest. And this is actually an old forest that is logged over and is all now in a regrowth level. But you see, I got my camera mounted onto the front of my bike. It was a pretty rough ride. Again, there's a lot of things that we need to look for. Silence is one of those things. Silence is an indicator of something very unusual that most of the wild animals are not familiar with. Domestic animals and wild animals will frequently react in a different manner to any threats. So you need to learn to familiarize yourself with how animals behave. And to do that, you have to learn what kind of animals are going to be in the area that you're going to be searching. But anyhow, I came upon this little meadow in the midst of this regrowth forest, and happened to catch out of the corner of my eye of just casually going through here, not really paying much attention to or looking specifically for anything out of the ordinary. I never would have caught it, but in just a couple of moments here, you're going to see there was a couple of old abandoned truck bodies that were left in the woods to rot, and so I over to investigate a little bit. Normally you wouldn't expect to find much there. However, I did find something that caught my interest, that was kind of different about this truck body, and that's the reason that I included that in this video. You see where some of the leaves look like they might have scuffed up, but I didn't find any what looked like recent trackage there, any recent sign of anything being there. But you notice that it's pretty well rotted away. There's not much left to it. Scrap metal is not really worth much of anything. Otherwise, I'm sure somebody probably would have hauled it out of here by now. But it's a good environment. It's a good place. It would make a good place for a hideout. Somebody wanted to rest up for a while. And what I noticed was interesting here is that all of the insulation in this truck body had actually been pulled to the front and laid out there, almost like it was intended to be some kind of a bed. You know, I have to ask myself, was this done on purpose by an intelligent being to make a place to live for a short while, or a layover spot? There's quite a bit of insulation there. It's hidden pretty much from the trail, which is very occasionally used by off-road bikers. It's posted against motorized vehicles, so only bicycles would be there, and hikers. But again, I didn't see any signs where anybody had been there recently. So, but it's a good place to hide out. You can keep an eye on the meadow and still be hidden, and make your way out through the woods here. It's fairly open. There are any numbers of ways you can get to escape from the area without and quickly be enveloped by the foliage and able to hide. And of course I did some slow panning around to see if there was anything that I could see that might be of interest. It's been so late in the day I probably would have gone off trucking to see if I could find any signs of anything. But, the sun was setting and I wanted to be back on the main highway before it got dark. And as you're panning through there, you can look and see. Maybe you can pick something out, but I didn't really see anything of any significance that would merit further investigation of the scene at this time. Perhaps later in the year, I'll go back and check it out in more detail and bring some, maybe some casting compound and all that other stuff, which I didn't bring this time. Well, he's getting back to the end of the day, so I decided to head on. That's my bike. It's not an off-road one, but it does awfully well off the road. Had it for a few years, put a lot of mileage on it, and you notice that over here there's a bed for a second truck body that's already completely right. I may go back there and do some investigating with a metal detector at some point in time. I suspect this might have been where they had their camp for the loggers, where they might have kept their equipment and had their lunches and all that. But this is a second day, and I went back to a place where I had seen some sign before, and I found this recently broken tree. There hadn't been any thunderstorms recently, so I don't believe that would have been hit by lightning. For some reason it looked like it was just snapped right off. Not really sure why, and left there. This is an area where you've seen in my earlier videos where I found a definite trackway of something large and by nature. So I thought I'd go back and see if there was any signs. And I found a couple of rather interesting things here. The tree that you just looked at, and also coming up a little further, when I get down to the riverbank itself, you'll find that I found a hole dug there. There weren't any real clear boot tracks there, so like it would have been dug by human means, by hand. I don't know what kind of animal that would make such a round hole, you know, simply by with their paws. You know, I found it interesting. I don't really know why it was dug there. It could have been something looking for clams or something to eat, or for some reason, I really don't know. This was right along the riverbank, and again, this trackway here goes up to where I know there was a known sighting of a possible Bigfoot during the in the 1970s, about 3 miles up this river and about a half a mile in from the river or so, or 3/4 mile or so. Similar in that distance anyways. It was a fairly easy walk for something that large to make that kind of a distance through the trackway. And this is the reason I found this interesting, is because this is actually a leg off of that trackway. But what you should do, no matter where you're going to be hunting, is you should get some aerial photographs, or even just search on Google Maps and get the satellite feature up, and take a close look at where you're going and see where the greenery is, where the forests are. And I think you're going to find that you're going to have better luck at possibly finding sign if you look for specific areas that could be considered what some people would call corridors. I call them trackways, because they are grow in such a way that they allow animals to go from great distances without being seen through these corridors. Many of them are not there on purpose, but they just happen to be there because most of that land that they're contained in is too rocky, or too hilly, or too marshy, or there's some reason why building or putting farmland in those areas just isn't feasible. But you can look at the pans here, and you can pick a nest. It might be something worth looking at further. On my next day off, I'm planning on going back and doing a little more looking for something. This area in here is leaves are starting to fall, and there should be a lot easier getting through. Much of this brush that's in here is all but impenetrable. It's so thick. I tried to make it through there a couple of 3 weeks before I had taken these videos, and it was just too thick to be worth it. If there had been some definite signs, I would have made, you know, more of an effort to get through there, but at this time it wasn't worth my while. Again, I have absolutely no problem going after something that looks like it's definitely worthwhile, but yeah, I'm not the type of person that's going to go chasing after a whim. So what do we have to find or to show for our all our hunting for Bigfoots? For the most part, we have a lot of blurry photos. We have a lot of videos with dark images that, you know, a lot of people claim to be Bigfoot, but probably isn't. I'm sure you can pick a lot of spots in here that some are going to be claiming are Bigfoot. They're really not. They're just dark spots in the woods. Here's a couple of good potentials that maybe they would have been worth going after. But since I was there, I did not see that potential that was there. The bigger thing that we find, and coming up here, you're going to see the heel print that I found in the sand, just a little bit in from where this tree was. It's about 250 yards to the west of it, but I came across a interesting and for size comparison there, I put a large a matchbox on the ground to show the size of it. It was a little bit wider than what my boot, being about 5 inches or so. So that's one of the things that you want to look for. Always look on the ground, always listen for silence. I'd include some video that I shot earlier this year in a deer yard. And these are all whitetails. Nice looking buck there. Kind of makes me wish it had been November, but this was done during the summertime. Well, not really summertime, it was late summer, I guess you'd call it. It was just a few weeks ago. But if you're really careful when you're going through the woods, there's a lot of other things you could be looking for besides that. There's a lot of wildlife. If you're careful, you can come across it. You can get some really good video, some good camera shots of it. And this brings to a point the issue of photographs of Bigfoot. And there are a lot of people that claim that Bigfoot be seen if you have a camera. I think that's hogwash. If you're going to consider yourself to be a researcher, you need to have a camera. You need to have instruments available to measure, or at least estimate the sizes of the things that you see, and compare them to other things that you have. So if you go in the woods for yourself to be a researcher, there are certain criteria that you have to meet to validate your claims to being a researcher. Number one is that you want to have the ability to collect information in a timely and accurate fashion. There's a lot of times I've heard where people have taken fiber samples and they've, picked them up with their fingers and they've shoved them in their pocket or whatever. Yeah, that's not the correct way to do it. There are also people that have some pretty blatant claims, but they don't have any pictures to back up their claims. As to the idea that Bigfoot is some sort of a special extra human being or a creature that can sense when you have a camera and makes himself invisible when you have one is ludicrous at best. So there's no real reason why you shouldn't have the equipment that you need to do a competent research. And in one of my upcoming videos there, I'm going to go into some of that in a little more detail. But I just wanted to share a few of these images of different things that you can see in the woods. There's a lot of things that we mistake for Bigfoot because we so desperately need to see a Bigfoot that whatever it is we see and find will suffice for our arts. But that's it for now. I'll see you next time on The Hunt for Bigfoot, Chapter 4.